Mark Takano and I know our way to San Jose. We are in San Jose at the California Democratic Party Convention, and we are joined, of course, by Mr. Takano. He is a member of the United States Congress. I'm Brad Pomerance, and I must ask you, sir, what made you decide to come from Washington, D.C. and make the trip to San Jose?
Well, it's always, to me, you and I have a long history. We were active in, our younger days.
Sure.
Way back in the day.
Way back when, of course.
And it's always good to reconnect with people like John Pettis.
Right,
and,
former speaker.
The guy that's moved on to the California Medical Association.
Jay Hansen.
Jay Hansen.
Right.
And
a lot of old friends.
And just to see people who've moved on to bigger and better things.
So talk to me about the party in the 1990s and the party in the 2010s.
Well, there's a big sense to, in the 90s we were just coming off of the Reagan years.
Right.
In the middle of the Clinton years, this transition to a democratic California. Who would have thought that California would emerge? I remember running for Congress in 1994.
Right.
And facing Prop 187.
Right.
And it looked very, very grim then. But Prop 187 really set the stage for California being a democratic blue state, I think.
And so let's talk about that state being so blue. Here we are at the California Democratic Party Convention. For argument's sake, we're going to presume for our conversation that Mrs. Clinton is the Democratic nominee,
sure.
Mr. Trump is the Republican nominee.
Yes.
How does that play in California? What does that do to the top of the ticket as well as down ballot races?
I think it does a lot. I think Californians, when they know what's at stake, whether it's immigration rights, whether it's labor and environmental law, whether it's people who care about global climate change. Why am I saying all this? Because what's at stake is the Supreme Court.
Right.
There are so many cases before the Supreme Court. President Obama's clean air, his global warming agenda has been stymied at the Supreme Court.
Immigration agenda.
LGBT equality could be turned back. And we're all breathing a sigh of relief that the California Teachers Association in the Friedrichs case. That case was going to be decided.
This is a case that would require union membership not to be based upon compensation or payment, I should say.
Well, it would have made it harder for unions to be able to say, if you benefit from union representation, if you benefit from a union representing you in a job dispute, you should be responsible for paying agency fees. And this would have said, no, that's no longer a requirement of being a part of a bargaining unit, which would have really eviscerated the ability of unions to represent working men and women. So
it begs the question.
Yes.
We had the tragic death of Antonin Scalia, unexpected, and now we have this arguably 4-4 split, although, look, Chief Justice Roberts has come out on, quote, the left of center side, as is Anthony Kennedy. Yes. There's a lot of angst about whether Mr. Obama should be appointing a nominee in his last year of his term.
Look, we went through in previous presidencies a democratically controlled Senate, voted against Justice Bork, but after giving him a hearing.
Right.
The Republicans are refusing even a hearing.
Right.
They're afraid that the president's going to appoint somebody likable by the American public, somebody who they believe is going to be fair. What's at stake here, and the Republicans know it, is a very, very broad array of public policy issues that are going to be decided by this court.
What I found interesting, and what I continue to find interesting, without taking a position, of course, is that when former presidential candidate Jeb Bush was asked, would you appoint if you were president, he said he would. And so there are some cracks. You have Senator Mark Kirk from Illinois suggesting that there should be a nomination. Susan Collins from Maine.
It's really important for us to keep the pressure on, to keep letting the public know that what's at stake, because I do believe that these little cracks will become much bigger fissures, and we need to have an open and honest hearing. We need a hearing at least, and an up or down vote.
And let me ask you, it's kind of interesting, I ask you kind of as a student of politics, as a professor yourself, could the Republicans not have said, okay, give us your nominee and then vote down?
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
My point is that's what happened with Justice Bork.
Right, with the Democrats.
With Mr. Bork. I don't know if he was a judge before.
Yeah, he
probably was. He was a judge.
Yeah.
But they gave him a hearing, they voted, and then the president submitted another name.
And what's interesting about that nomination, I believe, was that the nomination that ultimately led to Justice Kennedy?
There were nominations by George W. Bush that were rejected by the Republicans in control, and he had to submit a few other names. Now, that's the give and take of this process.
Is there anything you, as a member of the House of Representatives, can you do anything about this scenario?
Well, I took to the floor yesterday and gave a speech on this very topic, a 1-minute speech. And I won't say it's going viral, but it is getting some traction. People are sharing it. So if every representative in Congress would go to the floor and let their sentiments be known to their own constituents, the 180 so of us who are Democrats in the House certainly have that opportunity to do so.
So let me ask you about those 180. Do you think those 180 could break 200 based upon the controversy?
Oh, that's a good question, Brad, because you know what? Redistricting cases, cases that have to do with voting rights. The Voting Rights Act has basically been compromised under the last court.
Well, there's the
voter
Evanwell case out of Texas, which would redefine who a voter is for voting purposes.
This has all been agendized by, the Federalist Society. The right wing has definitely used the judiciary to position themselves when they can't do it legislatively, do it through the courts. So the quickest, shortest route, by the way, the campaign finance reform, which we couple with Voting Rights Act, which we couple with redistricting cases. This will set the stage for free and fair districts across the country.
But do you believe that people will vote on this issue, that because presuming the Republicans continue to preclude a nomination, will that become an overriding issue?
I think the polling is looking very bad in these swing states for Republicans, swing state that have the Senate, which could determine the Senate. The more Democrats make it clear, the more we can make this more we can get a language that we can clarify for the voter what's at stake. I think they will vote on this.
What about the question of LGBT rights? Because we know that the Republican candidates have made it very clear that they are looking to have the marriage equality case reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
They make no bones about it. You're absolutely right. I do believe that LGBT gains could be at stake. They could be chipped away at. That won't come necessarily, it would be too brazen to do it all at once, but I wouldn't put anything past these extreme conservative Republicans. I think it could be very well the case that they chip away, and they might even be brazen.
Now, in some states, LGBT voting blocks could be pivotal. Will the LGBT community come out and vote? You think about states like Florida.
We already know they came out.
Well stated. But you know what I'm getting at. I mean, a state like Florida, a strong LGBT vote could be the difference.
It could be the difference, and the LGBT community as well. There are so many communities for whom the court makes critical decisions. The LGBT community, the Hispanic community, the Asian American community, women, the women's right to choose is at stake here. When people understand, the reasonable, everyday things that are at stake. Look, I was sitting in the court listening to the Obergefell case being,
the marriage equality
what an
case.
Amazing thing that was to sit before the court. And
Historic.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a brilliant intellect. She's still top-tier, but you know what? Her voice was just a little bit feeble. She fell asleep in the Congress, and I was thinking, gosh, this court majority is
You'll
really...
come back? You'll come back?
I'll come back.
He is Mark Takano, member of the U.S. Congress. I'm Brad Pomerance, the California Democratic Party Convention. This is Charter Local Edition.
Over all 59 vacancies that have occurred in the U.S. Supreme Court in the 20th and 21st centuries, how many persisted longer than 200 days? 0, 4, 8, or 12? In all, of the 59 vacancies on the U.S. Supreme Court that have occurred in the 20th and 21st centuries, 4 persisted longer than 200 days.
This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're in San Jose today, the California Democratic Party Convention 2016, and we are joined today by Mike Gatto. He is a member of the California State Assembly, and I'm walking around and I see all these hats that say Gatto love him, and it seems to me there's a reason these hats are floating around, because I've heard rumors, and those rumors are that Mike Gatto may be running statewide in 2018. He's here to tell us if those rumors are true. True?
Well, so I've heard the rumors too.
You've heard those rumors.
I have,
yes.
and I, had told people that I wanted a little bit of a break.
Right.
From politics for a while, and
you had been rumored to be running for the state senate, and you are not running for that seat.
That's right, and I have young children, and 2 years in 2018 gives them the ability to grow up a little bit and start school, and so I'm looking very strongly at it, and I hope to be making an announcement very soon.
So let's talk about making that jump from the California State Assembly, where you represent about 500,000 people, to the state of California, where there are 38 million people in 58 counties.
Right.
How do you make that jump? What's the path? What's the plan?
So it's daunting. It really is daunting to figure on that many people, or within that many people. But I've said in my entire time in the state legislature that yes, we have districts, and yes, we have parochial concerns, but it can't always be about my district and my neighborhood. It has to be about my state at some point. We do represent the entire state. When I pass a bill, of course, it affects everybody, all up and down the state.
Well stated.
And so we do have to have a statewide outlook, and I've tried to do that. And then I also get around a lot. I get around the state a lot.
No, you do.
And I try to.
So do I. I get around a lot too.
And I try to talk to as many people as possible.
So tell me about our state. What have you learned? Tell me about the 58 counties, or at least not every one, but the regions.
Well, it's a beautiful state,
yes.
And you can understand a lot of the parochialism.
Oh, yes.
You go to parts of the state. I'm an LA boy. I grew up near the LA River. And it was so shocking to me to see a river with dirt and with trees.
I know.
And of course, because the LA River is paved with cement.
It is. But are we as parochial as we think we are, or do we really is there a commonality within our great states?
There is a commonality. The commonality is that everybody came here for a better life. There's a lot of people who came here from the Midwest for a better life. And of course, there's a lot of people who came here from other countries for a better life. And that California dream still runs true in this state. There's a lot of people who still believe in it. I still believe in it. And when you talk to people in San Francisco or San Diego, you can see it in their eyes when they talk about their community. So
you've represented a district that has been fairly safe, Democratic-wise, in terms of party preference. You'd be running statewide, a fairly blue state, but be that as it may. But my question really, though, is that when you're running in a state, you're representing everyone. You'll be the whatever job you run for, maybe treasurer, I don't know. I didn't say that, but be that as it may, how do you appeal and serve all 38 million Californians?
Sure. Well, I talk with them about things that I've done that appeal to them. I mean, when I was one of the lead negotiators for the water bond, we wanted to make sure that every single part of the state was taken care of.
And you probably learned a lot about the state in that negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, up and down.
Yes, the water needs of various regions are very important. And other legislation I passed, the rainy day fund, that benefits everybody. A lot of things that I've championed, they really are issues of statewide concern.
Let's talk about an area which I'm sure you would learn a lot about, and you already have, I'm no doubt, and that is how we regulate our great states.
Yes.
And one of those regulatory agencies is known as the Public Utilities Commission. In all candor, it happens to regulate the industry in which I work, but the focus of your bill really is not about that. It is about some concerns that you have with regard to the San Bruno disaster in the Bay Area and the current disaster in Porter Ranch. Talk to us about how you believe the PUC fell down in its duties with regard to those two incidents.
Sure. So it's not just Porter Ranch and San Bruno. When I go all around the state, there's not one corner of the state that's not concerned with the PUC.
Okay.
In the Bay Area, of course, it's the San Bruno explosion. In Los Angeles, it's the Porter Ranch gas leak. But in Orange County and San Diego County, it's the fallout, no pun intended, from San Onofre.
Which has closed down.
The storage of nuclear waste. In the Central Valley, it's these oil trains that are carrying back in shale oil through their communities, where they're concerned that they're not necessarily regulated proper.
Well, the Napomo Santa Maria refinery,
That's
and then Diablo Canyon in San Luis Obispo.
And here's an agency that regulates everything from your cable bill, as you noted, to your cell phone bill, to your landline, to Uber and Lyft, to limousines, hot air balloons,
right.
gas utilities, electric utilities.
So do you feel as if the time has come to eliminate that agency?
I wouldn't say eliminate. I think that the CPUC needs to focus on, or our regulators in California need to focus on things that can explode, like gas pipelines,
right.
and things that can shock you, like electrical utilities. And then I think they need to focus on consumer protection in other areas. But this idea that they're going to spend, a number of years determining whether an Uber driver background check should be 7 years or 8.5 years, while we have gas pipelines literally blowing up, that to me is kind of disturbing.
So where do you want to go with this? Because I understand you have something called the Pure Act, and it's bold. It's bold. Tell me about it.
Well, so this proposal would go before the voters, and it would strip the CPUC from its protections, and it would say, we're going to rethink the way that we regulate these entities, because in 2016, nobody would constitute the PUC as it is now. This is the creature of the Railroad Commission of 1911. It sort of suffers from mission creep over the years. It regulates more and more and more, but now it's too busy. We want regulators that are more specialized, more focused, more in tune with what the public needs, and we're asking the public to vote on this and then to give the legislature the authority to split up the CPUC, to give its regulatory authority to different commissions and different entities that will better serve the public.
So last year there was some CPUC reform passed. The governor vetoed it. Yes. This year, I see you're taking a different path, going to the voters. So explain as a parliamentary matter what happens. This has to pass the legislature by 50+1?
No, this passes the legislature by a 2/3 margin.
To get it onto the ballot?
That's right. It then goes to the public, and the public...
But does the governor have to sign it?
No, no signature needed.
Okay, there's the parliamentary genius of Mike Gatto. Okay.
Well, look, I respect this governor tremendously.
Right.
I mean, of course we differ. I mean, I have disagreements with family members. But I did support those 6 reforms last year, and I was disappointed he vetoed them.
Okay, so it goes to the voters arguably in November of 2016. A little esoteric. I mean, back me up there. A little, yes, how do you, we're going to be voting on president and Senate, and how do you get people to focus on this, which, like you said, if you didn't know, the CPUC has tremendous influence.
Yes. What I can tell you is that I had people in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles calling me, and not just one family, calling me weeping because of what happened at Porter Ranch. I mean, for people who don't know, there's this huge gas leak. They were out of their homes for Thanksgiving and the holidays after that. And people were really, really, really offended that the CPUC did not notice this.
Right.
Their job is to keep us safe. And when the critical jobs are not getting done, it's time to rethink how the regulators are constituted in the state.
But how do you frame a message around an initiative when you're going to have minimum wage on the ballot? I mean, this ballot,
the message is simple.
Yeah.
Everyone's heard the phrase "too big to fail."
Oh, yes.
The CPUC is too big to succeed.
Oh, wow.
It's that simple.
Talk to me about this convention. What do you think? 2016, a lot of excitement in the air.
Yes, I'm very excited to see Joe Biden speaking today.
I was with the
I
Vice
love
President.
Joe Biden, and he's going to be here today, and that still gets me very excited.
Right.
And it's great to be here with so many members of the public and hearing their viewpoints. Some of my best bill ideas come from people just walking up to me saying, "Hey, why don't you do this or that?"
How'd you get this idea?
This idea was came from just really examining how the PUC does things.
And you're chair of Utilities and Commerce, correct?
Yes, I am.
Have you enjoyed that? It's a new position for you.
I was very. Lawmakers talk a lot about being humbled, but I was really humbled by getting this position. It is a daunting learning curve. I mean, to sit there and learn about all these different things, cable regulation and cell phone regulation and electrical and everything like that. But it's been a whirlwind. I'm very excited. I took over in the midst of this Porter Ranch gas leak, and I tried to serve the public there as best as I could.
His name is Mike Gatto. There are rumors floating around that he may be running statewide in 2018, but right now he is a member of the California State Assembly. He is with us in San Jose at the California Democratic Party Convention. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thanks so much for joining us on Charter Local Edition.
In what year did the California legislature pass the Public Utilities Act? 1882, 1892, 1902, or 1912? The California legislature passed the Public Utilities Act in 1912.
We're in San Jose, California at the California Democratic Party Convention. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Ellsworth. He is a candidate for the California State Assembly representing the 5th Assembly District in North State, California. Give us a sense of the 5th AD.
Well, Brad, the 5th AD is 9 counties, goes from Auburn to Yosemite, basically the Nevada border to the edge of the Central Valley. The largest cities, to give you an idea, in our district are Auburn and Mariposa.
Yeah, Auburn I know, Mariposa I know a bit, but essentially you have a huge geographic district with population centers peppered throughout.
Yeah, and I mean we also have counties like Alpine that don't have an incorporated town in the whole county.
Right.
It's there's 1,000 registered voters in Alpine.
So give me a sense, how do you campaign in a district that is so large geographically with people spread out over so many different places?
So there are some old sort of gold mining towns that are still somewhat close together that have
beautiful,
sidewalks.
Actually, yes.
So you can actually walk.
Okay.
And I think that that's the goal for anyone who really cares about grassroots campaigning is to knock on people's doors and ask them what matters to them.
And so what does matter to them? You've been knocking on doors. What are North State residents saying to you?
You know, I'm hearing a lot of people upset about lack of infrastructure. I'm hearing a lot of people upset about the fact that there's no broadband in some of these counties entirely.
Well, we'll try to change that as part of the cable industry, but that's another conversation.
We also have a real lack of cell phone coverage, which hampers, you know, both public safety and entrepreneurs.
Right.
I also hear a lot of people talking about the fact that we have the highest childhood poverty in the state. Madera County has a 25% childhood poverty rate. We have some counties where every school district in the county has 100% free or reduced lunch.
And so as you march through this district, it's hard to deny that the district trends right of center. And so talk to me about campaigning as a Democrat in a district that is known to be right of center.
You know, I think the district leans right of center. The district also leans very heavily towards no party preference. And I think that's because people don't really feel in these rural counties like the state government does anything for them.
I hear you.
And I think if I can convince them that I'm going to fight to convince the state government that all of California matters, not just the big cities, not just Silicon Valley and LA, then I can win people's votes regardless of their party.
And I think about some of those counties, they are hotbeds of support for the state of Jefferson, which would be breaking off of California. Do they also want to pull some of southern Oregon?
Yeah. So the state of Jefferson proposal is, I think, probably prompted by that lack of feeling that the state government even knows that they exist. And I can't blame them for that. I think really strongly that California is the greatest state in the union and we need to preserve it. But we need to make sure that everyone who lives here gets its benefits.
So I want to get a sense from you as you march through this convention. Why was it important for you to be here? What is it about these types of conventions that attract candidates like yourself?
You know, I think as a first-time candidate, it's good to meet people who have done this before. It's good to meet fellow candidates, good to meet assemblymen. It's also a really great way for me to get in front of a lot of at least people strong in the Democratic Party in the region because the region's so big. It's nice to have everyone in one place. That's harder to do in a place as big as the 5th Assembly District.
And you are a unique candidate in that you are young, you're in your 20s, but you're also an Iraq War veteran, which I'm rendered speechless when I think about someone of your, and I say this with all the respect intended, tender years, having spent time in a war zone. Talk to me about that time and how it informs your run for state office.
I was in Iraq in 2008, which was the height of the surge and the height of the insurgency. And I think that more than anything, it informed the idea that democracy works in America because we force it to. It's a choice we've made as a society. And that's a choice we have to keep making every day.
Right.
And part of making sure that all Americans are invested in that system is making sure that everyone receives the basic benefits of this amazing nation that we live in. And I'm just hoping that I can do that and join the long list of veterans who have gone on to continue public service in elected office.
And so when you speak with constituents about your service, what's the sense? What's the feedback?
I get a lot of thank you for your service, which is something I've never been comfortable with, and I hope that doesn't come across as false modesty. It's just not.
No, I get it.
There's not an answer that most people. It was a job I did, and I was very proud to do it. But otherwise, I think that there's a lot of people who appreciate the fact that I was willing to work for the country before I thought I had any right to be part of its leadership. And I hope that people see that I feel that way.
Okay, I want to talk more about North State, and I have to ask you about the drought.
Yeah.
Because the drought has been absolutely brutal to face up and down the state. I want to talk about the drought pre-2016 because we've had some relief, arguably. Right. Give me a sense of how North State handled the drought from 2011 to 2015.
Well, the 5th Assembly District especially is interesting in that we have some of the biggest reservoirs in the state.
Right.
But in the southern part of the district, we have the cattle ranchers who are hurting in some ways the worst from the drought. And we also have the pressures of development from a lot of the cities that are just outside the district that are expanding their urban sprawl and taking groundwater away from those ranchers and farmers. And that's a real issue. I also think that this drought and the fact that the water does tend to come from the regions in the north is part of what's prompting that state of Jefferson movement. This idea that, we have water, if we could keep it all, it'd be fine. And unfortunately, that's a very short-sighted view, both in a basic humane sense, because we're not actually going to tell LA they can't have water ever again, and also because most of that water is actually federally owned. So what we need to do is find a way to make those people feel like they're part of the process and they're getting something for the natural resources of the beautiful place they live without doing something crazy.
Now let's talk about 2016, because while we were anticipating a Godzilla El Nino, right, especially in Southern California, that Godzilla didn't make it to the south, it made it to the north.
Yeah.
And we look at the Sierra Nevada mountains and we're almost at average. I mean, it is wet and it is snowy. And so how are your residents feeling?
As we just saw, the state didn't meet its water reduction goals for the first time.
That is true.
And I think that's really sad because I don't think those water reduction goals have hurt the average person. I think we need to look at mitigating them for farmers and ranchers as things get better, but I think the average person's learned that they don't actually need to water their lawn as often. They don't actually need to hose down their car as often. Those seems like things that we should probably try to continue generally as a state, because I think our water situation is going to be a lot more fluctuating.
But here's the challenge, I think. You talk about this division and this desire for the state of Jefferson. It's only going to get a little trickier when you consider that North State got so much water and Southern State has not.
At the same time, things like schools and roads, those things only work in rural California because we get some money from big cities. It all balances out at the end of the day. We're all in this together.
But do they
We're all
know?
one state.
But do your constituents appreciate that? Do they recognize it?
I think they understand it viscerally. I don't think they think they're getting a fair shake, and neither do I. And I'm hoping that we can.
And what's interesting is some talk about the North State divide. I wonder about the East-West divide. In some ways, it's more coastal inland.
I think it's really true.
And so, what's your sense of that divide?
I think people around the country tend to really think of California as its big coastal cities, as the Bay Area and Los Angeles, and to a lesser extent, places like San Jose and the Silicon Valley.
Sure.
And I think people forget that most of California is still what California's always been. It's cattle ranchers and prospectors. In my district, I have people who still pan for gold for a living.
I want to go and play with them. His name is Kai Ellsworth. He is a candidate for the California State Assembly 5th Assembly District. We are coming to you from San Jose at the California Democratic Party Convention. I'm Brad Pomerance on Charter Local Edition.